Welcome back, YouTube. So this is part 2 of my Dust Warfare rulebook review. So this is going to cover the overview of the rules. Okay, so once again I'm using a review that was written by a member of the Clapham Wargamers Guild. His username is Raziel. I'll try and put a link in below this time. I think I forgot to in the last video. I'll try and edit that as well. So if you're watching, I'm terribly sorry, dude, but your review's awesome and I thought I'd use it for my channel. Okay, so I want to talk now a little bit about the game itself, so the rules of the game. This is the bit that I sometimes find difficult and I struggle with, and that's the actual rules of playing a game of any game. Okay, because I am a little bit more into models than I am games, but there we go. So a game turn is split into 3 phases in Dust Warfare. You've got initiative, command and unit phases. The initiative phase is a roll-off, with players rolling a number of dice equal to the number of units they have left on the table. The person with the so basically you roll your combat dice. Combat dice are they're essentially D6, normal 6-sided dice. But they're entirely blank except for 2 sides. On 2 sides of the dice are a target, and those targets suggest a hit, or they call it a hit. So basically you roll one of those combat dice per unit you have left on the table. Each player does. Okay. Whoever rolls the most number of hits goes second, so the person who rolls the fewest number of hits goes first. Okay. It's quite interesting because the thing about that, it means if you're actually losing the game, you've got more of a chance of going first. So you're always getting that chance to do a little bit better, even if you are on a losing streak. Okay. We then move from initiative into the command and unit phases. So these are kind of an I go, you go system. So in the command phase, players roll to see how many units that they can actually order. So as they roll a number of dice equal to the number of units they have, and every hit allows 1 order. So basically in the initiative phase, for every hit that you got, that's 1 unit you can activate in the command phase instead of the unit phase. So smaller forces are less likely to be able to do a lot, but they'll always be able to go first, whereas armies that have a lot of units will generally be able to activate more in the command phase, but will generally have to go second. Okay. In the command phase you can order units to attack or move, but they also lose the ability to react or do as much in the unit phase. So it's a bit of a tactical challenge there, okay? So when do you act? Do you act now in the command phase or later on in the unit phase? So moving on to the unit phase, this is the main part of the game. This is where we play a normal game of, say, 40k. Okay, the primary player, so the first player, gets to activate all their units, and then the second player gets to activate all their units. So first off, the player whose turn it is gets to choose a unit. They roll to remove any suppression markers. They check if they're suppressed or how suppressed they are, and if they're too suppressed they'll start to retreat. So suppression markers are put on you when you're under fire, basically. If you have just 1 suppression marker on you, you'll only be able to act once and you can't react. Reacting is quite an important thing though, so I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. The actions you can do in a turn are usually move, which is normally 6 inches, and attack. Units can actually split fire in Dust Warfare, unlike 40k, so if you have a unit with anti-tank guns and with anti-infantry guns, they can choose to split their fire on 2 different targets to make the most out of your smaller units. You may have noticed Dust Warfare units are actually quite small. You don't add models to a unit, or very rarely do you add models to a unit. As far as I can see, there's none where you can at the moment. You just buy the whole unit as one thing. It's normally around 5 models for normal infantry and then 3 for heavy infantry. Okay. The attack roll is actually quite simple. So when you roll to attack as an action, your stat card tells you how many dice to roll. So you don't have stat cards actually, so that's actually wrong. what you have is here, let's go for Action Jackson, who is the British hero. Here it tells you how many dice to roll. Okay, so when you roll, every hit on your combat dice is a wound. Okay, so here, for example, if it's against class 1 infantry, you'll get 3 combat dice with a 60 watt phaser gun, I guess. So you'll get 3 combat dice, and for each hit, you'll cause 1 wound. Okay, so the first number is how many dice you get, the second number is how many wounds per hit. Right. The defender can then try their armor rolls. So they take they roll their armor dice against your attack dice. Each hit that they get with their armor dice cancels out one of the attack dice. The defender then gets to assign wounds that have got through to models, and regardless of how much damage they've taken, a unit attack picks up a suppression marker. So the more units you fire at one unit, the more suppression markers they are going to end up receiving, because they're going to get so much fire put on them. So then we go on to reactions. So units can choose to react to enemy fire. If a unit moves within 12 inches of you, then you can choose to fire or move away. If an enemy unit fires on them from within 12 inches, they can also react just in the same way. This is important for a few reasons, but the simplest is that close combat is handled as a shoot attack with 3-inch range. This means that if a player declares a close combat action against a unit, that unit can move out of the way. Reactions happen before the enemy gets to actually engage in close combat unless it's suppressed. Yeah, so that's why putting units in suppression is important. So if you suppress a unit, they can't react. So if you charge them, they can't react to your charge, and they will have to be assaulted. So that's really cool. So it represents laying down lots of fire as you charge in. Okay, so there's quite a tactical aspect to those reactionary actions there, or stopping your opponent getting those reactions. Tanks have quite similar rules to infantry, so all that last stuff was about infantry. But tanks, rather than suppression, they take damage. So there is actually a vehicle damage chart, just like 40k, or in a similar way to 40k. Not anything like 40k actually, but there is a vehicle damage chart. So you might be able to destroy tanks' guns or cause a hull breach or something like that, just to hinder it, like hinder its performance in the game. Okay, so that is a brief overview of how the game works on a turn-by-turn basis. So just remember, you have your initiative, your command, and your unit phases. Okay. Cheers for watching, guys. That was part 2. It's just a short one compared to part 1. And next up, we're going to go with the battle scenario generator and army building. See you in a bit, guys.